Hello everyone, I'm Yogesh Singh. Welcome to my YouTube channel Yogi's Data Lab. So, today we are going to talk about the anatomy of a good prompt. In the last video, we saw that what is a prompt quality, right? And how does it impact your output quality? What we are going to look at now is what exactly makes a good prompt. How do you make a good prompt? So, what you'll see is, let's do a quick recap and then we'll get into the components of what are the components of a good prompt. So what we covered in the previous video was what is prompt engineering. We talked about the core problem that AI does not read the context as per your request. So whenever you are giving a prompt over there, until and unless you have specified the context, it is not going to understand it. A better prompt always gives you better output. Now, every component of a prompt, there are six components, and every component of a prompt has been classified as required, as recommended, and optional. Which one of these do you think is a required part of any prompt? So I guess most of you would have guessed it correctly. So let's go ahead and look at the components of every prompt. So the components of every prompt, you see there are six components: the task, the role, the context, constraints, output format, and examples. So task is the required component. Okay. Role and context, these are recommended. They are not required, but they are highly recommended. Constraints, output format, and examples, these are optional part of how you write a prompt, but it is always good to have them and include it in a prompt. So we will go through each of these components and we are going to see exactly how this works. Though it is not necessary that you combine all the six of them together in every case and build a prompt. You'll use some components somewhere, and based on this, you'll have different frameworks like Race, Crisp, Ryzen, where we'll see which components are used. So we'll have separate videos exactly for each framework going ahead. We'll do that. But for now, let's start with understanding the task component. The task component that you see is a required component. Task is an action, right? And any action word is a verb. So if you go ahead and write words like explain, write, summarize, compare, generate, debug, create, rewrite, list, analyze, and obviously many more words, like where you're giving a AI a command, what task it has to do. It will understand exactly what is it that you are looking for, because my intention to interact with an AI is to get some job done, right? So obviously there has to be some action word defining what task it has to do. In case your task is weak, right, what will happen is it will not understand exactly what you want it to do. But if you are given clear tasks, it understands exactly what it has to do, right? Write a program or write a Python function to read a CSV and calculate the column averages. So you're specifying exactly what you want. Explain the difference between supervised and unsupervised learning. Analyze this data set and identify the top three trends by region. So you have to be very specific about what is the task that has to be defined. So every prompt should start with a clear action verb. If you cannot go ahead and put an action word there, then at least you need to go ahead and specify what is the goal that the AI has to achieve in order to give you the result. The second component that we are looking at is the role. Now, what happens in a role component? You tell the AI exactly what it has to behave like, right? What is the expertise? What is the tone? What is the depth? Like, let's take a very simple example. So, if you're asking to explain overfitting from a data scientist, from a teacher who is explaining it to a beginner, from an interview coach, or from a senior engineer reviewing a code, all of them will have different answers to the same question, right? Because the way they look at the problem is different. So if you look at this, the difference in the answers could be your technical bias variance trade-off. For a teacher, it could be analogy first, plain language, and one real-world example. For an interview coach, it could be in a different way the person would be looking at. From a senior engineer, it could be a different way how he could be looking at overfitting. So it is very important for you to specify how an AI system should behave like when it is trying to do the task that you have asked for. So these are a couple of examples where you see that if you are doing data analysis, dashboards, and KPI reporting, you can go ahead and tell an AI that you are a senior data analyst. If you're building models, you're building pipelines and deployments, you can say you are a machine learning engineer. You're building roadmaps, PRDs, or your stakeholder communication, you can say that you are a product manager, and so on. So, what does it imply? It implies that if I can go ahead and tell an AI system how it has to behave, it will know exactly what it has to think or how it has to think for a specific task that I have assigned. And the answers will be much more precise in the way I am looking for. Let's go to the third component, which is context. Context is another important part. So now we have gone ahead and specified a role, we have given a task. If I tell it a situation, right, in which situation this role has to be applied and how this task has to be done, it is going to connect the dots there and understand exactly how it has to go ahead and give you the results. So it is setting up a background information that will be required to give you specific answers. So in context, there are a couple of things that you can set. Like you can set the audience, you can set the experience level, you can set a business situation, a project background, a data set schema, and the time constraints. So I'll just read this out. So in audience, you can go ahead and say the audience is non-technical leadership team. So when you say that the audience is a non-technical leadership team, it knows who will read and use this output. So it will, as a role, it you have defined, it will understand the audience, do the task, and generate the output for this audience. Right? So it understands that. When you talk about experience level, you can say I understand Python basics, but I have never used Panda. So it knows that okay, where I have to start explaining you Python. Yeah, giving the experience level. Then business situation, where what is the surrounding business problem, what do you exactly want, what was there in the data set, what is it that you are looking at, and what is it that you exactly want, what was the situation of the business, what is the project background, or how will the data look like, what are the columns in your data, or what is the data dictionary of your data, what are the time constraints, like you need it for a 15-minute slot or you need it for talking for 10 minutes. So just for 10 minutes, what is the document I require? Right? So it is going to generate the text accordingly rather than giving you generic answers, rather than giving you very long answers. It will be more precise if I set the context, if I have a role, as well as I go ahead and give it a task. Now, what happens when you have not given a context? You end up getting generic answers with these. But when you are with a context, you will always get targeted answer. Like you are setting up explain feature engineering with a classification problem on a tabular customer data. I am preparing for a data analyst interview next week. So it is understanding exactly what you are trying to do. You have set a context. Here we have not given a role, right? Here we didn't say a role. We have just given the context and we have given it a task, right? So as I said, you don't need all the components all the time, but you need to be clear about what are the components so that you know that you're utilizing most of them for your tasks which you are going to do. Let's go to the next component, constraints. Now constraint is an optional part, okay? But it is a very powerful part where you don't let AI control what the output has to be. You take the control in your hands, you take the power back from AI saying that this is what I am supposed to do and this is how you are supposed to give me the output. So what are the constraint types that you can do? You can go ahead and constrain it on length, you can constrain it on tone, language, technology, what not to do. right? So what to avoid and what is the scope. So in length, you can say that I want the answer in maybe two paragraphs or a couple of words. The tone, you can say that I want a formal tone, I want an informal tone, I want a casual tone. Language, you can specify that you don't want acronyms, you want to avoid jargons, you want to have a plain English. So it is going to write your answers in the same accordance. What to avoid is another important thing as to what you don't want an AI to do. That sets a guardrail. That is what we call a guardrail, which ensures that the AI does not cross that border and does whatever it wants. So you are fixing it that okay, this is where you have to stop. That's your boundary. And then coming up with the scope as to what is it that it has to cover. Because if you ask a question, it has the all the knowledge. It will try to give you everything. So you don't want that. I just want you to go ahead and tell me specifically about these things that I'm looking for. So you're setting a scope. You're bounding it. So this constraint that you give gives the power in your hands and does not let AI to go ahead and generate anything that it wants. So without a constraint, you see, the length often becomes too long. It will never match your audience, may or may not match your audience, may or may not even fit your domain because it becomes a generic question, right? So, but the moment you go ahead and put constraints, the length is controlled, the tone will match exactly what you are looking for. The examples will be drawn from your domain, means it will be picked up from your domain, and you'll be getting the correct examples. And AI will skip what you already know. So you have set a context. You have shown that what you know, so you don't need to be explained about that. You only need a couple of things just to add on to it. It is not going to add on things which you already know. So that will make the results of the prompt much more appropriate and better. Now, let's go to the next one, which is our output format. Now, when I talk about an output format, how is it that I want the output to look like, right? So I can want bullet points, I can want a numbered list, I can want the output as a table, I can want it as an executive summary, markdown, JSON, code block, presentation outline, checklist. So what we generally do as beginners is we just go ahead and give the prompt an option. This is what I want. Go ahead and give me the result. And then we copy it, bring it somewhere, and start editing it from the beginning. It's better that we go ahead and give it as a format in which I want. This is mostly useful for people who are going to be in a technical background where you can get your results in markdowns in JSON, which you can utilize easily. But for people who are not going to go into coding and are in a non-technical background, even if you're writing emails, even if you're writing your reports, even if you're getting your documents in place, you will need things that will save you time, like getting the results in bullet points, numbered list, or you want a comparative table. So you want it in a way that you can copy paste it. That is already done. Why do you want to go ahead and do it manually again, copy from here to there, right? So what we are looking at is we are trying to go ahead and specify how the output should be looking like, so that the output, the way I have to present it going ahead, the prompt can generate it. And this again saves you a lot of time of formatting the output that you receive. The last component that we are going to talk about is examples. Now, examples is completely optional, but it is one very powerful addition to any prompt. If I give an example to a prompt, the prompt tries to understand exactly what is the pattern that it has to follow to give you a result. So there are three types of prompting there: zero shot, one shot, and few shot, where you don't give any examples. You go ahead and give one example and you give a couple of examples. So we have separate videos for that. Once we are in the flow at that point, I'll go ahead and explain a video each for zero shot, one shot, and few shot, the benefits and cons and limitations of it. But for now, let's understand that examples is an important part where we go ahead and give a couple of examples to a prompt for a prompt to understand what type of output it has to generate. Now, if you look at this, we are bringing all of this together. We talked about the six components. So you have the task alone, which is explain decision trees. Adding a role, it becomes act as a data science instructor and explain decision trees. You are adding a context to it that act as a data science instructor. I am a BCA final year student who understands Python but has never studied ML algorithms. Explain decision trees. So you're setting the context, you're setting the role, you're setting the task. Now in this case, you're setting constraints also. So this is the same thing. All you're saying is maximum 300 words, use simple language, include one real example, and avoid mathematical proofs. So I put a constraint very clearly what you don't want and what you want. Now we're setting the output format. The format is one sentence definition, how it works with three bullet points, real world examples, and three key takeaways. That is it. So if you notice here, we have gone ahead with all of the five things here except the example. We did not give any example here, right? So we have not used all of them. We have used only the five components to build this. Now, if you look at this one, the final polished version becomes act as a data science instructor who teaches ML to beginners. So you are setting the role. I am a BCA final year student. I know Python, but have never studied ML algorithms. My goal is to understand decision trees for my final year project. So you are setting the context. Explain how decision trees work is a task. Maximum 300 words, simple language, one real world example, no proofs. You are setting the constraints. And format is one sentence definition, how it works in three bullets, one example, and three key takeaways. You are setting the output format. So you have used five components here and you have a pretty polished prompt. Now, based on these six components that we have a couple of frameworks. So we are not going to talk about the frameworks in detail today. I'll just give you a glimpse of the first framework, which is called as the race framework. We do have videos for every single framework that we will show here, plus apart from that also in the sequence of the series. For now, let's understand what is a framework. Now, framework is how you are organizing your prompts. Okay, so there are a couple of them like Race, Crisp, Ryzen, 8, CoStar, and the many more. But let's talk about the race framework. So a race framework has only four components. One is role, action, context, and expectation. So that is what forms race. Race is you have role. First, R stands for role. Action is what is the task that you are going to ask the AI to do. The context is you're setting the context for the task that you are asking for. An expectation is how your output should look like. So this is one of the most common framework which is used, which is the race framework, where you set your role, action, context, and expectation. So just to take an example, we can say that act as a senior data analyst, you're setting the role. Analyze the sales data and identify the revenue trends, you're setting the task. The context is the Q3 data, the audience is VP of sales, the data set is region, product, and revenue. So that's your context. And your expectation is return an executive summary with three key findings and two recommended actions. So that is what you get from a race framework. Now, this is just for you to look at. When we go into these frameworks, we'll talk about it in detail as to how these frameworks are defined, what is their full form, and how which components are going to be used. But if you look at this closely, all of these frameworks are built using the base building blocks of these six components only. There's no other component. You're using these six components only, which will go ahead and form a framework. Now, let's try to understand a couple of prompting mistakes that happen. Let's look at the first one. You don't define a task. Just give the word. You have not defined a task. Or you said write an email about the project. You didn't give a context. You said explain ML, write Python code, give me a roadmap and summarize this paper. So this is writing a ML Python code you are asking for a roadmap, you are asking to summarize a paper. They are all unrelated requests. They are not related to each other. Or you have not given any output format. AI decides what structure you want, like analyze the data set and tell me what you find. So you didn't give any output, so it will give you a very, very long sentence telling you all that it has found. What do you want? You didn't tell it any output format. You didn't ask and define the task to a granular level. What we want. The second is conflicting instructions. Write a detailed, in-depth, comprehensive analysis in 50 words. So if you look at this detailed, in-depth, and comprehensive, both cannot be together. They're conflicting, right? So you would not want to go ahead and get into conflicting prompts, or it is too vague, AI cannot understand properly, or you are assuming that AI knows your previous conversation. Now, this thing is very rare, where if you are in a tab and you are continuing to go ahead and talking to it, it will remember the context if you're using the paid versions and it is in the memory. But if you shift to a different tab, it will not. Right? So it is not always that it is going to remember. Plus, if you believe in it that it is going to remember and you continue on in the same tab, after some time you'll realize that possibly it has forgotten the context. So it is very important that you keep on reminding it. So not always assume that AI knows your previous conversation. So these are a couple of common mistakes that we do. I can believe because when I studied this for the first time, I realized there are a couple of things even which I did. So I can pretty much understand that you would be able to relate a bit to it, exactly what is happening, what mistakes you could be doing as well as of now. So this is where we are going to learn to improve these prompts. So what did we see in this video is that every good prompt is built from 6 reusable components. So we talked about those components. Task is the only required component. True. Other than that, we had 2 recommended and we had 3 which were optional. Each additional component adds precision. Every prompt framework uses these same components only. These are the building blocks of all the frameworks, and you can build prompts progressively. So, this will talk about progressive prompting. Eventually, start, role, context, constraints, and format. So, this is what we have done here. We have progressed gradually, but we'll talk more about how to improve the prompts later on. Professional prompting is structured communication. Yes, that is true because when we talk about prompting, the prompting has to be pretty organized. And if it is organized, the results that you are going to get will help you not to reiterate your work and it will save you a lot of time. So, that is what we have in the anatomy of a good prompt. What is going to come next is we are going to dive deep into role prompting. We have seen the component role, which is important. So we are going to talk about role. We'll see exactly how role has to be assigned, what role should be assigned, what experience should be assigned, and we'll discuss about it in the next video. So if you have liked this video, please do like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for watching. See you in the next video.